Flaca. Your left eye used to drift when you were tired or upset. It's looking for something, you used to say, and those days we saw each other, it fluttered and rolled, and you had to put your finger over it to stop it. You were doing this when I woke up and found you on the edge of my chair. You were still in your teacher's gear, but your jacket was off and enough buttons were open on your blouse to show me the black bra I bought you and the freckles on your chest. We didn't know it was the last days, but we should have. I just got here, you said, and I looked out where you'd parked your Civic. Go roll them up windows. I'm not gonna be here long. Someone's gonna steal it. I'm almost ready to go. You stayed in your chair and I knew better than to move closer. You had an elaborate system that you thought would keep us out of bed. You sat on the other side of the room. You didn't let me crack your knuckles. You never stayed more than 15 minutes. It never really worked, did it? I brought you guys dinner, you said. I was making lasagna for my class, so I brought the leftovers. My room is hot and small, overrun by books. You never wanted to be in here. It's like being inside a sock, you said. And anytime the boys were away, we slept in the living room, out on the rug. Your long hair was making you sweat, and finally you took your hand away from your eye. You hadn't stopped talking. Today I was given a new student. Her mother told me to be careful with her because she had the sight. The sight? You nod. I asked the senora if the sight helped her in school. She said, not really, but it's helped me with the numbers a few times. I'm supposed to laugh, but I stare outside where a mitten-shaped leaf had stuck to your windshield. You stand beside me. When I saw you, first in our Joyce class and then at the gym, I knew I'd call you Flaca. If you'd been Dominican, my family would have worried about you, brought plates of food to my door. Heaps of platanos and yuca smothered in liver or queso frito. Flaca. Even though your name was Veronica Hardra. The boys will be home soon, I say. Maybe you should roll up your windows. I'm going now, you say, and put your hand back over your eye. It wasn't supposed to get serious between us. I can't see us getting married or nothing, and you nodded your head and said you understood. Then we fucked so that we could pretend that nothing hurtful had just happened. This was like our 5th time together, and you got dressed in a black sheath and a pair of Mexican sandals, and you said I could call you when I wanted, but that you wouldn't call me. You have to decide where and when, you said. If you leave it up to me, I'll want to see you every day. At least you're honest, which is more than I can say for me. Weekdays I never called you, didn't even miss you. I had the boys and my job at Transactions Press to keep me busy, but Friday and Saturday nights when I didn't meet anybody at the clubs, I called. We talked until the silences were long, until finally you asked, "Do you want to see me?" I'd say yes, and while I waited for you, I'd tell the boys it's just sex. Nothing at all. And you'd come with a change of clothes and a pan so you could make us breakfast. Maybe cookies you baked for your class. The boys would find you in the kitchen the next morning in one of my shirts, and at first they didn't complain because they guessed you would just go away. And by the time they started saying something, it was late, wasn't it? I remember the boys keeping an eye on me. They figured 2 years ain't no small thing, even though the entire time I never claimed you. But what was nuts was that I felt fine. I felt like summer had taken me over. I told the boys this was the best decision I'd ever made. You can't be fucking with white girls all your life. In some groups, that was more than a given. In our group, it was not. In that Joyce class, you never spoke, but I did, all the time. And once you looked at me, and I looked at you, and you turned so red, even the professor noticed. You were white trash from outside of Patterson, and it showed in your no fashion sense, and you dated niggas a lot. I said you had a thing about us, and you said, angry, no, I do not. But you sort of did. You were the white girl who danced bachata, who pledged the SLUs, who'd gone to Santo Domingo 3 times already. I remember you used to offer me rides home in your Civic. I remember the 3rd time I accepted. Our hands touched in between our seats. You tried to talk to me in Spanish, and I told you to stop. We're on speaking terms today. I say, maybe we should go hang out with the boys. And you shake your head. I want to spend time with you, you say. If we're still good, next week maybe? That's the most we can hope for. Nothing thrown, nothing said that we might remember for years. You watch me while I put a brush through your hair. Each strand that breaks is as long as my arm. You don't want to let go, but don't want to be hurt either. It's not a great place to be, but what can I tell you? We drive up to Montclair almost alone on the parkway. Everything's quiet and dark, and the trees shine from yesterday's rains. At one point, just south of the oranges, the parkway passes through the cemetery. Thousands of gravestones and cenotaphs on both sides. Imagine, you say, pointing to the nearest home, if you had to live in that place. The dreams you'd have, I say. You nod. The nightmares. We park across from the map dealer and go to our bookstore. Despite the proximity of the college, we're the only customers, us and a 3-legged cat. You sit yourself down in an aisle and start searching through the boxes. The cat goes right for you. I flip through the histories. You're the only person I've ever met who can stand a bookstore as long as I can. A smarty pants, the kind you don't find every day. When I come back to you again, you have kicked off your shoes and are picking at the running calluses on your feet, reading a children's book. I put my arms around your shoulders. Flaca, I say. Your hair drifts up and clings to my stubble. I don't shave often enough for anybody. This can work, you say. We just have to let it. That last summer, you wanted to go somewhere, so I took us out to Spruce Run. We'd both been there as children. You could remember the years, even the months of your visits, but the closest I came was back when I was young. Look at the Queen Anne's lace, you said. You were leaning out the window into the night air, and I had my hand on your back, just in case. We were both drunk, and you had nothing but garters and stockings on under your skirt, and you put my hand between your legs. What did your family do here? You asked. I looked at the night water. We had barbecues, Dominican barbecues. My pops didn't know how to, but he insisted. He would cook up this red sauce that he'd splatter on chuletas, and then he'd invite complete strangers over to eat. It was terrible. I wore an eye patch when I was a kid, you said. Maybe we met up here and fell in love over bad barbecue. I doubt it, I said. I'm just saying, Junior. Maybe 5,000 years ago we were together. 5,000 years ago I was in Denmark. That's true, and half of me was in Africa. Doing what? Farming, I guess. That's what everybody does everywhere. Maybe we were together some other time. I can't think when, I said. You tried not to look at me. Maybe 5 million years ago. People weren't people back then. That night you lay in bed, awake, and listened to the ambulances tear down our street. The heat of your face could have kept my room warm for days. I didn't know how you could stood the heat of yourself, of your breasts, of your face. I almost couldn't touch you. Out of nowhere you said, I love you. For whatever it's worth. That was the summer I couldn't sleep. The summer I used to run through the streets of New Brunswick at 4 in the morning. These were the only times I broke 5 miles, when there was no traffic and the halogens turned everything the color of foil, firing up every bit of moisture that was on the cars. I remember running around the memorial homes along Joyce Kilmer, past Troop where the Camelot, that crazy old bar, stands boarded and burned. I stayed up entire nights, and when the old man came home from the UPS, I was writing down the times that the trains arrived from Princeton Junction. You could hear them breaking from our living room, and Nash, just south of my heart. I figured this staying up meant something. Maybe it was loss, or love, or some other word that we say when it's too fucking late, but the boys weren't into melodrama. They heard that shit and said no, especially the old man. Divorced at 20, with 2 kids down in DC, neither of which he sees anymore. He heard me and said, listen, there are 44 ways to get over this. He showed me his bitten up hands. We went back to Spruce Run once more. Do you remember? When the fight seemed to go on and always ended with us in bed, tearing at each other like maybe that could change everything. In a couple of months, you'd be seeing somebody else, and I would too. She was no darker than you, but she washed her panties in the shower and had hair like a sea of little puños, and the first time you saw us, you turned around and boarded a bus I knew you didn't have to take. When my girl said, who was that? I said, just some girl. That second trip I stood on the beach and watched you and wade out. Watched you rub the lake on your skinny arms and neck. Both of us were hungover, and I didn't want any of me wet. There's a cure in the waters, you explained. The priest announced it at service. You were saving some in a bottle for your cousin with leukemia and your aunt with the bad heart. You had on a bikini bottom and a t-shirt, and there was a mist sifting down over the hills and lacing the trees. You went out to your waist and stopped. I was staring at you, and you were staring at me, and right then it was sort of like love, wasn't it? That night you came into my bed, too thin to be believed. And when I tried to kiss your nipples, you put a hand across my chest. Wait, you said. Downstairs, the boys were watching TV, screaming. You let the water dribble out of your mouth and it was cold. You reached to my knee before you had to refill from the bottle. I listened to your breathing, how slight it was, listened to the sound the water made in the bottle. And then you covered my face and my crotch and my back. You whispered my full name and we fell asleep in each other's arms, and I remember how the next morning you were gone, completely gone, and nothing in my bed or the house could have proven otherwise.